Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Apyayantu mamangani.
Apyayantu mamangani.
Akpranachakshuhu.
Akpranachakshuhu.
Shotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani.
Shrotramato balamindriyani sarvani.
Atvam brahma upanishadam.
Sarvam brahma upanishadam.
Aham brahma nirakuryam.
Maham brahma nirakuryam.
Mama brahma nirakarot.
Mama brahma nirakarot.
Arina anirakarnamastu anirakaranam me astu.
Anirakaranamastu anirakaranam me astu.
Tadatmani nirate ya upanishadsu dharmaha.
Tadatmani nirateya upanishadsu dharmaha.
Te mai santu.
Te mayi santu. Om Shanti Shanti.
Confusion arises even when somebody says Ham Brahmosmi, because he's read that in the Shastra, the teacher said Aham Brahmosmi. That Aham is still seen as this body, mind, sense complex, as separate, as different from everything else. Like our friend, I told you in UP, there was one income tax officer or somebody who had a big following. He says, I am Radha. And after the office, he'll come back in the evening, dress up like Radha, and yet got a following. You are not able to see Brahman. First, you understand what Brahman is. And that Brahman has to be I, the Atma, I, the subject, the hearing, speech, everything we've seen is nothing but the I, without being any of them. It is not an ear, it's not a tongue, it's not the taste itself, it's not the object of taste. This transformation from understanding Brahman in the third person and understanding Brahman as I in the first person, Atma, is a big step. Doesn't happen automatically. From being a Prathama Purusha Brahman to an Uttama Purusha Brahman. The transition doesn't easily happen. That is the understanding. So when somebody says, for example, I know a tree, I know tree. in our normal understanding of this Vakya, it implies at least three things. I know some property, some attribute of the tree. Therefore, everybody else understands it. When I say a tree, everybody understands more or less the same thing. As a trunk, a bark which is brown, branches, leaves, seed, roots. Leaves are green. So he knows some attributes of the tree. These attributes do two things. One, it immediately defines the tree as an object of knowledge. And two, because the attributes one knows, it immediately limits that object. It is a tree. I know tree means it is different from a brick. It is different from an idea. It is different from an emotion. It is different. It immediately limits it by vastu. Then you also can limit it in many other ways, because I know a tree, can also mean, somebody might say, I know a coconut tree. You add one more adjective. You limit it further. Distinguish it from all the other trees. I know tall tree. I know a bent tree. So these attributes one assigns to whatever one says, I know, defines it as an object, and immediately puts limits on it. In fact, when somebody says this, I know tree, and therefore implies that he knows the attributes of the tree, he actually doesn't know all the attributes. He knows some attributes, some properties. So you can use that also to indicate other things. Oh, that boy, that person who's tall as a palm tree. You attribute, you compare. But he doesn't know all the attributes. In fact, it is not possible to know all the attributes of any object. When somebody specializes in a particular object, he knows more and more and more about less and less and less. And the wise person who knows more and more about a subject, an object, recognizes each time that he learns more that there is so much more to know. And every object breaks down into further objects. An object is only a name and a form given, which itself is subject to change, and which itself breaks down into many more names and forms. There is another very great implication when somebody says, I know tree. There are three words, I know tree. There is a tree which we have seen as an object. And there is a person, an individual, who is a knower, who knows that tree. And there is a knowing itself. Three clearly distinct, separate things. You see, that is how we do everything in this jagat. This is true of everything, not just physical object. Somebody may declare, my guru knows heaven. How does he know heaven? Because he learnt it from the Shastra. When you say he knows heaven, what does it mean? Same thing. He knows certain properties of heaven. It is where one can go after death. It could be heaven, it could be Swarga, it could be Vaikuntha, it could be Kailasha, it could be anything. And it is a place where there are no dukkha, no pain, no aging, no jara, no mrityu. All that we don't want here. But we still don't know all about it. You know, only some properties. Or if somebody says he has studied the theory of relativity, so he knows theory of relativity. Even there, same thing applies. That theory of relativity becomes an object with some attributes. Somebody might say, I know sunrise. Every day I get up at Brahma Muhurtam, I know sunrise. Sun doesn't rise at all. That's a different aspect. But he says, I know sunrise. Any such thing, when you say, I know anything, we are talking about an object with attributes which change. All of it will change, which is within bounds of time and within bounds of space, and which distinctly separates the object and the subject. What if you were to make the same statement, I know Brahman? I know Brahman is a very similar statement. I know tree. Therefore, we apply the same measures to say, I know Brahman. What if somebody says, instead of saying, I know so and so, I give the example of a hockey puck. I do not know puck. There also the same thing happens. It is an object which I do not know. There is a subject who does not know. But when you say, I know Brahman, and you apply the same rules, then you get into an impossible situation. If I say I know Brahman, it implies that I think of Brahman as an object and I as a subject. Whereas all the time, what Upanishads are trying to tell us is Ham Brahmosmi. That subject is the same as the object, is the same as the process. Every experience is Brahman. The experiencer is Brahman. Every object of experience is Brahman. That Brahman Aham. Now the teacher has taught in the first chapter in a way which it's not possible to make a mistake. And yet mistakes are common. Teacher said, this is how we learnt it from Purvesham Shushuma. As what? That which is starting from Shrotasya Shrotram, etc., to saying that which Vak cannot reach, Manas cannot reach, and then saying, finally, the key sentence, Aviditat Anyat, Viditat Adhi. The moment you say, I know or I don't know, we are talking an object. So how do I know this? Next, the second chapter begins, as we saw last time, before the long gap, the teacher trying to see if the students have understood by making a very big statement. We put on the second chapter, first 3 verses. Yadi manyase suvedeti. Let's chant this. Yadi manyase suvedeti.
Yadi manyase
Vedeti
Daharame nunam tvam.
daharame nunam
Vetta brahmano rupam.
Vetta brahmano rupam
Yadasya deveshu.
Yadasya deveshu
Athanu mimagum mevate.
Athanumimagum smevate.
This is what the teacher said. Student says, Manye viditam.
Manye viditam.
Naham manye suvedeti.
Aham manye suvedeti
Nona vedeti vedacha.
Nona vedeti
Yo nastad veda tad veda.
Yo nastveda
Yona vedeti vedacha.
Nona vedeti
Student answers the teacher. Teacher is now having given the background, given all that thing about what is Brahman, and saying that is Brahman, may you know, not something on which you do upasana. He says, if anyone says, Svedeti, I know very well, then it will be like the fellow who said, I know tree. So he says, that implies that he knows this as an object, separate from himself. It does not include himself. There is therefore subject-object differentiation, and therefore there are properties. Therefore, it is subject to destruction. Very great statement he makes. See that statement? Yadi manyase suvedeti daharamevapi nunam tvam vetta brahmano rupam. If you make the same statement like I know tree and I say I know Brahman very well, then the Brahmevapi, another variation in the text, the Haramevapi or the Brahmevapi. Both means Alpam. What you only know a little of Brahman. You are looking at Brahman like any other object. And all the time in the first chapter, repeatedly he is shown how Brahman is not an object. One who understands that statement, it is viditat anyate aviditat adhi. These two cover everything, every object. And therefore, what is only left is subject, which is non-separate. Therefore, now we have a subject is the same as the object. But if one makes a statement like, I know tree, and says, I know Brahman, yadi manyase, if one thinks, svedeti, dabram evapi, adaharam evapi, nunam tvam vetta. You know very little of Brahman. Remember, these are students typically in Upanishads who are already very highly accomplished people. You can see from the kind of questions they ask. Here also, question is something you can think about. What makes the mind fall where it does? What makes the ears hear? What makes the eyes see? Eyes are jada. Manas is jada. They are all instruments. Somebody has to wield the instrument. What is it that makes them do what they do? What makes words words? What makes words communicate? Question itself is very profound. And having taught them this usual cryptic way, I'm sure the Guru would have been expanding on that, dilating on those verses in the first chapter. He wanted to make sure that the students understood. So he puts them in a spot, looks at them and says, all right, if you think, having studied all this, you know Brahman very well, and therefore you can make a statement like, I know Brahman very well, then Dabramevapi nunam vetta. You know very little of Brahman. You haven't been able to get this idea out of your head of Brahman being an object. Brahman is you. How can you take it outside you and say, I know Brahman? Brahmanaha rupam. The swarupa of Brahman, which is the swarupa of everything. The swarupa of your shirt is fabric. Atma of your shirt is a fabric. No fabric, no shirt. Shirt is only a rupam. Its swarupam is the fabric. The swarupam of the fabric is the yarn. No yarn, no fabric. Therefore, no shirt. The swarupa of the yarn is the fiber. You can keep going backwards. Swarupa, swarupa, swarupa. At some point, it has to stop. That which does not have a swarupa, which is self-revealing, which doesn't require something to reveal its Swarupa, its Rupa. Is Brahman, is you. Any object you take keeps going till you reach consciousness. Consciousness is not an object. Consciousness is not like an emotion. It's not like a thought. And that confusion, use of the word consciousness comes because we use consciousness to indicate this is a non-conscious object. You are a conscious person. And when you go into coma, you are unconscious. That's not consciousness. That which makes anything exist, which is the satyam of everything, and which itself is nothing. It is the satyam of time, it is the satyam of space, it is the satyam of every object, tangible, intangible. Therefore, if a person manyase suvedeti, you know precious little of Brahman. In fact, correct, probably this will be you don't know Brahman. It's true also if you say, I don't know Brahman. Because even then, just like the fellow who says, I don't know hockey puck, you're still objectifying it. You cannot objectify yourself, you are the subject. Brahman is you. Whether you say, I know or I don't know is a confession. I know somebody who thinks he knows. There also the Guru says, you don't know. You know precious little. The nature of Brahman, the Swarupa of Brahman, which does not require another object to show it. It does not ever become an object. It cannot be objectified. It is you. Yad asya tvam yad asya deveshu atha nu mimamshameva te manye viditam. Because a person who says, who thinks, manyase, manyate, suvedeti, as what? As a form. That's why you say it cannot be correct statement. Yat asya tvam, form of you. The moment I say I have imagined the form. Or sometimes I have so much conviction that a particular deva is Brahman. Because I'm a great devotee of Devi. I'm a Devi Upasaka. For me, Devi is Brahman. But then I've given Devi a form. That means I've given Devi attributes. I've given stories to the Devi. Whether you think of Brahman as any form of you, or any Deva among all the Devas, Deveshu Madhye, if one thinks like that, then we have a further work to be done. We have been studying this Upanishad with the Guru for so long, but because you make a statement, manyase suvedeti, manye suvedeti, Guru says, mimamsyameva te, you have to do more mimamsa. Mimamsa means analysis of the words and sentences of the Shastra. In analyzing and understanding the Shastra, every word, every sentence is analyzed threadbare. Which is one of the reasons why we like to read Bhashyam. Acharya has taken every word and shown what it means. What is the context? How do you understand that word? When we finish more of this, eventually we will do Brahma Sutra. Small sutras. But the amount of analysis that you do, it's Mimamsa Shastra. So many great Panditas have done Mimamsa. Mimamsa is the analysis of the words and sentences of the Shastra. The Guru tells him, if you think of Brahman in any form, whether you or any Deva, it's good to say that, okay, I understand I'm a great bhakta of Lord Krishna. He is, I think, the ultimate Lord. Very good. But don't think it's Brahman. Remember, he said earlier, Edam yadidam upasate. Anything you give a form to, you're immediately putting limitation. Whereas we talking about Brahman, Purnatvam, my Purnatvam. So you have to do more Mimamsa, more analysis, more contemplation. And that should lead one to, that kind of mananam should lead one to a situation where one can look at anybody's contention. And if it is opposed to what Shastra says, not for convincing the other person, but for understanding where the flaw is in that. You might have seen many, we used to do this as children in school, prove that 1 is equal to 2 or 1 is equal to 0. You can prove it. But if you go through it step by step, you will know where the error is. It's not apparent. It looks very logical. So all these great masters who come up with their own points of view sound very logical, sound in keeping with your experiences. But if you can do Mimamsa carefully, good logical argument, tarka, backed by an analysis of the Shastra, then you know where the error is. That is why Swami G used to say, when you start studying, do not go and study this also, attend this lecture, attend that Guru's talk. Stay till you understand what it says, what Shastra says. Because everything looks convincing. You go to discuss with Advaitin, he will convince you. Yes, I put in 10 years of research in this. This is my argument. You go to Vishishtadvaita, he will do that. You go to Krishna, he will do that. Study them, but study them when you have checked all of these, done Mimamsa, then you go to study and understand them. Swami therefore never encouraged anybody to study the other masters. till you have got certain clarity. Otherwise, like the school friends of mine, we will all get confused. If 1 is 0, how do I understand mathematics? Because the log looks very convincing. My whole foundation of mathematics is shaken. So do more mimamsa. Now the guru has put the spin. All the students are sitting there. What do I say? They are expected to respond. Guru has said, if you think that you know Brahman very well, then you don't know. So what does the student say? Should he get up and say, yes, I know, or no, I don't know? Either way, he's in trouble. These are obviously very highly accomplished students. So it looks like one of them gets up and says, after the Guru has made the statement, gets up and says, Manye Viditam. Correct? Just now I said, if you say Manye Suvedeti, then you don't know, and if one gets up and says, Manye Viditam. I think it is known to me. Now the teacher probably smiling internally, waiting for him to continue. Because he knows his students are very good, so he's not going to take a statement at face value. Interestingly, this sentence of the students, Manye Viditam, is attached to that mantra. Immediately after the teacher has finished saying, if you think you know Brahman very well, you need to study more. Student gets up and says, Manye Viditam. He's waiting, what is he going to say further? He says, Naham Manye Suvedeti. He takes the same words of the Guru. Yadi Manye se Suvedeti. If you believe, if you think, if you consider, you know Brahman very well, like you would say, I know tree, which also is not true. You never know the entire properties of tree, we said. Even there's a question mark. I know sunrise, there's a question mark. But in the same vein, if you say, I know Brahman very well, then you don't know. Then you need to study more. You know very little. You know Brahman only as an object. So having made the statement, Manye Viditam, I consider Brahman is known to me. Guruji, you've been teaching us for so long, we're sitting and doing Shravanam Mananam. I cannot say I don't know. I can either say I know or I say I don't know, but I cannot say I don't know, otherwise I'd be an insult to my Guru. Manye Viditam. Naham Manye Suvedeti. But I do not know Brahman as an object. Using the same words that the Guru used to show that anybody who says, I know X, in the same way, if he says, I know Brahman, he is still in his mind separating subject to object. This is not in that way. Naham Manye Suvedeti. And he makes some, so this is the kind of sentences which sound like paradox. And anybody who's not understood will find, what is this? You're making contradictory statements. Manye viditam. Naham manye svedeti. Don't stop there. No na vedeti vedacha. No na vedeti. Na u na vedeti. Vedeti. It is not that I don't know. No na vedeti. He said, Manye viditam. Naham manye svedeti. No na vedeti. It is not that I don't know. But I don't know it the way you meant it when you said, he who says I know only knows it as an object. That way I don't know. I don't think of it that way. I haven't understood it that way. Not that I don't know. No vedeti. Vedacha. I know. I know without any samshaya. Right? The way the cha is there, no? The chakara. Sarva samshaya bhakshaka. Indicating it is a swallower of every kind of doubt. I have studied under you, Guruji. I know. Without any possibility of a doubt. So he's now made all these contradictory sounding statements. I don't know very well the way you meant it when you said he who knows, who thinks he knows very well does not know. It is not that I don't know. I know very well. Anybody who's not studied this, who's not understood what he's talking about, who's not understood the idea of subject-object, who's not understood that I, the subject, Brahman, can never be objectified, and therefore looks at everything as object, will be nicely confused. In fact, one of the biggest problems in Western writers I have seen, either they are absolutely biased or they don't understand this. You look at Brahman, the Satyam, the very Atma of everything as another object. So however big a scholar one is, however erudite one is, however intelligent one is, if this is not understood, go back to the drawing board. Do more mimamsa, more shravanam, mananam. The very way he presents it will separate those who understood, those who not understood. No, Shastra also says, Acharyavan Purushaha. If you are qualified and if you have a proper teacher, there is no doubt that you will know. Therefore, if we assume that these set of students that this Acharya is teaching are all highly qualified, are all adhikari, or at least most of them are, then they will understand the statement. Not some highly intelligent, extremely well-read research scholar from Harvard University. They have difficulty understanding this. So he says, Yaha naha tad veda tad veda. Amongst us, among the students here, Yaha tad veda, who understands this, what the statements I have made. Naham manye suvedeti, nona vedeti, vedacha. Amongst those students here who have understood the statement of mine, I do not know Brahman well the way you meant it as an object. It is not that I don't know. I know very well. Vedacha. Amongst us who have been studying with you, Guruji, all this time, anybody who understands my statement, that is not confused by my statement. Yaha, naha, tad veda. Tad meaning here, my statements. Tad veda, tad veda. Here the tad is Brahman. Veda, Brahman Veda. Tad Brahma, sa atma. It is the same. I, the Brahman. Very often the problem is because you cannot separate physically the physical I, including the Stula Shukra Sharira, and I, that is the eye of the eye, ear of the ear, manas of the manas, etc. You cannot separate them. So it has to be done through cognition. Therefore, these statements have to be understood. One who understands these statements I have made, tad veda, he knows Brahman. What is the statement? Nona vedeti vedacha. He repeats the statement. What do these people understand? What is the statement that I have made that they understood? Now, na vedeti vedaiti. It is not that I don't know. I know very well. But I don't know it the way the Guru meant it when he said, Yadi manye says vedeti. So amongst us, any student who's understood my statement, Nona vedeti vedacha, he has understood Brahman. See, what a nice way of getting out of that trap that the Guruji set for him. He can neither say, I don't know, nor can he say, I know. Both ways he is caught. He comes up with this beautiful verse, the paradox. In this whole thing, other than the initial first chapter where the dialogue takes place, when the student asks the teacher the question and the teacher explains, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyat Vacho Havacham, etc. This is the only dialogue. After this, the Upanishad will take over. But just these two verses, if one studies and understands, everything's clear. Therefore, he says, Yo nas tad veda tad veda. In fact, in every Upanishad, you will see the question that the students ask to begin with itself is a very profound question. Somebody who's really thought about all of these things. Mundaka Upanishad also we saw. That knowing which is as though you know everything. What is that? Or Nachiketa's question. after death, does the Atma survive? What happens to it? What is that Atma? Just read these two verses again, one more time. Just now with the meanings in front of us. Can you put it on the screen, these two verses only? Yadi manyase vedeti.
Yadi manyase
Svedeti.
suvedeti.
Meaning should now span out. If you consider you know it very well, like I know tree. Daharame-vapi nunam tvam vetta.
Daharame-vapi
Nunam
nunam tvam
veta.
You know little alpam of what? Brahmano rupam. The nature of
Brahmano rupam.
Brahman is I. And if you say I know tree, it is not I, it is outside I. There's nothing outside I, but I is not the tree. Yadasya tvam yadasya deveshu. Consider it in any form, in the form of you or in the form of any deva, your ishta devata, then no, indeed, mimamsya mevate. You have to do mimamsya mevate. And then the student nicely answers, manye viditam.
Manye
Manye
viditam.
viditam.
Aham manye suvedeti.
Manye suvedeti.
So don't trap me with that sentence, I know. Nona vedeti vedacha.
Nona vedeti vedacha.
No, here is na-u. Indeed. Indeed, it is not that I don't know. Na vedeti. Vedacha. Yo nas tadveda tadveda.
Yo
Nasteda.
Statements are very clear to anybody who is understood. Therefore, he will not make a statement like Manye Suvedeti. So amongst us in the student body, not only in this class that we're sitting there, he says, but every student who's got adhikaritvam, who's got an appropriate teacher, why that parampara becomes so important? Acharyavan Purushaha. That he who understands the statement of mine, yonas tadveda tadveda. Nona vedeti vedacha. I made a big statement. Nona vedeti vedacha. That whole statement that I made, anybody who's understood that has understood what the Guru has taught. Having completed the dialogue, just in these two verses between the teacher and student, apparently the teacher is satisfied. So the Upanishad takes over. Problem is, the words sound very confusing. We have our own pre-orientation. It's not very easy to take it, absorb it in the view of our prior orientation. So then Swami Ji, how do I know Brahman? You've already said it's not available for word. You've already said it's not available for thought. And all this while I'm spending so much time getting up so early in the morning, trying to attend the class, trying to understand. How do I understand Brahman? It is not something which is known. It is not something which is unknown. You made the student give very complicated answers. How do I understand this? In the next verse, Upanishad takes over and talks about how can we understand the Swarupa of Brahman and therefore my Swarupa? We will look at that tomorrow. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi
Harihi
Om.
Om.